Hey everybody, Al Fragnoli, Zach Suddy, Legal Leaders. We're joined today by Katie Christensen. Katie is the Associate Director of Academics for Student Athletes at the University of South Carolina. Katie, thanks for coming on with us today.
Hey all, thanks for having me.
It's great seeing you this morning. We got quite a few questions lined up for you here. The first one we want to chat with you about is you got your start at Central Michigan University. That's where we met when we were working on our master's program there. Fire up chips, right? You were an intern,
Absolutely.
for a little while there and a student. You were actually a student athlete as well. From there, you had stops at Wyoming, Illinois, and now at South Carolina. Tell us a little bit about your journey in college athletics, what ultimately got you to where you are now, and cover a little bit about what your role is at the University of South Carolina.
Well, I think, and you've been there, Al. You came out to Wyoming when I was there, but admittedly, I kind of just pulled the trigger. I was a little bit freaking out about getting a job. About to graduate in May of, I think, 2012 at Central Michigan. So I was applying for jobs in January, got an opportunity to go to Wyoming. Just felt like, let's just go to Wyoming. So pulled the trigger in January, didn't go out there until August. Hadn't really been out there, had been out there as a kid once. I'm like, how bad can it be, Well, went and found a place to live and was like, all right, we're doing this. So, I went out there not knowing anyone. I had went to college 45 minutes from home, so I'd never really been away from anyone. Quite the adventure for sure, but I do owe most of where I am for where I'm at now because of that stop. So I went out there, a really solid mid-major program, beautiful Wyoming, obviously worked with some really solid people. Like I get like really good memories of the people I worked with there, and I'm still pretty close to them, but really working for Wes Moss there, who was a director. Most of what I do now or like how I operate now is because of that. So, well, yes, it was probably one of the more trying times in my life, just that not really having people. We went to the Chili's for fun on Fridays, just things like that, the snow, but truly like the work ethic and the attention to detail and the sense of urgency and all the opportunities I was afforded there just off the rip. Wes was like, hey, what do you think you want to do, kid? And I'm like, I think that I'd like to work in football academics. So he was like, here you go. So those experiences and kind of, drinking from a fire hose essentially are what made me quickly learn like, okay, this is good. Maybe not in the state of Wyoming, but this is what I want to do. So that was a good stop. But I knew when my year internship was up there, probably wanted to get a little bit closer to home. And it just worked out that Illinois had a football academic counselor spot open. So usually your first stop, you're working with track or golf or something like that. But excuse me, I was able to snag the job there in Champaign, and it was good to get back home, be part of the Big Ten. And, every stop I talk about, I almost get happy because I've really had really, really good opportunities to work with super solid people. And that's what's helped me get to where I am now. So, working with Jeff Ewan there, who's now oversees academics at the University of Florida. Annie White is still at Illinois. Keiko Price is now the director at Emory. Those are some of the people there that, took me in as a brand new professional. And some days I'm like, man, those people were so patient with me. Like, I don't thank them enough for just bringing in this brand new person, essentially throwing them with football, but they threw me to the fire and you got to learn so much. Like, it was just a really good opportunity, having been there for 4 years, but then having the job open at South Carolina, which was essentially a lateral move. But as I grew through my profession, it was like, okay, I think I want to go work in the SEC. Like, let's see what this is about. South Carolina is still a really good school, playing football at the highest level. So it was just another jump of like, you know what, let's see, you got to get some more experiences in life. And coming down here has been like each stop is like, it makes me really happy to think about like I've had the opportunity to just cross paths with like some of the best. So coming down here, Maria Hickman has been here for almost 15 years. I work with Paul Stolzfus, who's been here a while. They've been in the SEC. Having the chance to work for Coach Muschamp for 5 years, Coach Dillman, his strength coach, like truly has shaped me into where I am as a professional and like how to best navigate supporting student athletes. So I mean, it's been solid. Like I've been really fortunate to have crossed paths with like the best to really do it. So no complaints there. But what I do day to day, I oversee our football academic department. So we have 3 advisors and a graduate assistant. So we do a little bit of chaos management, a a lot of life skill development. But from the time they come into recruiting, we're like, hey, so how many of you like school? It's cool if you like school. It's cool if you don't like school. But regardless of how you feel, where you're at, preparedness, like we're going to meet you where you're at, and we're going to be your people for your full time here. And then even after you leave, like you're a Gamecock for life. So you're stuck with us. We're going to be on your line. You're going to be hearing from us. But essentially, we build relationships and we really strive off of those. So we get to know them, how you best learn. And even when you come in, you're seeing us every day. So we're making sure you're doing your work, meeting eligibility, progressing towards graduation. But essentially, like, we want you to develop. So even if school is hard for you, like if you're starting here, you need to get here by the time you leave here, and you need to be prepared for life when you leave. So I'm not doing my job if you don't leave here with a degree, but more so like you're prepared for the next chapter. Now, if that's the NFL, great, but you're leaving with a degree. So I get a good chance to equip people for life, even if in the moment you're not always focused on school, if that makes sense. So everything academically, assisting them in picking their classes, making sure they're turning in their work, like, and all the messy stuff in between of just making sure young people are okay is essentially what we do. Every day is different and an adventure for sure.
That's fantastic, Katie. Thank you for sharing that. Now, you've been in the sports industry for quite some time now, from your Friday nights at Chili's to now your cultural culinary diversity in South Carolina. Much of your experience stems around college athletics. You were a college athlete yourself. Did you know from the time you were young that you wanted to be involved in college athletics for a career? And when was that point that you decided this is the career for me?
Well, essentially, I was always confident I had an aspiring career in the WNBA, but as I grew up and saw that wasn't evident, I think it really developed in college. So coming in, I thought I wanted to do business. Having been a student athlete, like we were exposed to the field of student athlete academic support services. So I wouldn't have ever known that I would have like a specific person who helps student athletes in school. So, I kind of thought that idea, but then my parents were like, what is that even? What do you do? But it was more just the more I was exposed to things, being an FCA in college, being around all the different entities, like having friends outside of track and field, like I was close to a lot of guys in the football team, and just seeing all the opportunities there were, it just stuck with me. It was like I couldn't get away from it. And I was like, okay, no, this is what I want to do. And who knew that I would be afforded the opportunity to have so many people that would help me get to where I wanted to be. But it really did just stick with me. Greg Adamson too, which Al, he was our strength coach in college. He was my friend in college. He was in FCA. Like, we were in the same master's program. Like, he was a big influence too, of just like, hey, this field exists. Like, you can go and help people and help better themselves. Like, even if in the moment you don't realize it, like you're helping them in the long run. So I think the more exposure you get, it was just like, okay, like this is my jam. Like, I like people. I want to have an impact, but it's not like I want to go coach or something like that. So I think the more I was kind of knee deep in it and interning in it at Central Michigan, it was like, okay, we can do this. This seems pretty solid.
Awesome. Katie, you got a lot on your plate that you do in your current role. What do you enjoy most about the job?
Definitely, there's an endless amount of opportunity to impact people. So, and young people are great. Like they're really the best. And I say that with the disclaimer that there's a lot of really hard days and there's a lot of really good days, and having the opportunity to really be in the trenches with them. So when they're coming in as freshmen, they have no idea how much time they're going to spend with you. But especially at the SEC, like we have an endless amount of resources, but a lot of it too is just like allocating your time. And that's my favorite. Like, and it's not always a walk in the park, but you're sad, you're happy, you're riding the emotions, but helping young people, like they're so resilient, they're so adaptable, like, and you meet all different kinds, like, and just people's energies, even too in college athletics, like for the most part, people have good energy, and like, that's what you want to be around. Like, it keeps you young, it keeps you moving. Like, you can't do this and not have urgency and like some drive to you. So my favorite part is helping them, like seeing them win games on Saturdays and knowing how much time they're putting in behind the scenes, like not just in their sport, but that they were up till 2 a.m. writing a paper, or they've went and met with their professor. Like, those kids become your humans. And when they leave you, it's like you feel you feel like a piece of you is kind of leaving because it truly is a family. Like you're investing in them, you have a relationship with them. Like this isn't just I see you once a week on Zoom. Like you're coming in, you're going to tell me what's wrong. Like I'm making sure you're okay as a human first, and like helping you balance all these resources you have. So we always tell them, never in your life will you have ever been more supported than you are now at the highest level. So strength, nutrition, sports psychology, academics, your position coach, like, and it's all just dumped on you. But when you see them where they come in at and when they leave, and like when things click, it's like, it's good. I mean, you're truly getting to like go to battle with the kids, like in school, in life, like, and then when it all comes together is like, we got this, you know. And but seeing people develop too through like, there's difficult times, but I don't know, it's just a cool experience because young people afford you endless opportunities to invest in support. And it's a lot though. It's definitely something that you need to know what you're signing up for.
All right, Katie, loving everything that you have to say, and excited to ask this next question. You've been surrounded by tons of different bosses or leaders, if you will. Al and I like to refer to them as leaders at all
Yep.
at all of your stops in athletics over the careers. What are a couple characteristics that you believe make up some of the best leaders, and maybe some characteristics you saw along the way of the people that helped you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like it's a long answer because for me, I work in academics, so I work in the academic department. So I've had so many people, like I talked about at Illinois, like Annie and Jeff, and Keiko, and here even Maria and Paul, Wes at FIU. Like I've had so many solid people to learn from. And I think what I've learned most from them is it's not even necessarily how to be like a great academic person, but it's about how to care about people. It's about how you communicate and like your urgency, your attention to detail, like those things more than anything are most important. But you know, I've been through a lot. Like we had 3 head coaches in my time at Illinois, and I was 24, 25. I didn't know what was going on, but it's like taking care of people as people, and investing in that, like making sure that your crew is okay. So even overseeing, you know, my football academic unit, like first and foremost, I'm like, we got to make sure our people are good. Like we have to communicate. We have to be able to talk about things if they're not going right. But it also doesn't have to be a thing. Like those are the very people that, you know, I've been in the trenches with, and I've learned that like, let's just talk through it. Like communication is gonna essentially set us up, and like things aren't always gonna go right. But ultimately too, like I think why I've been where I've at is that those leaders too, like didn't take themselves too seriously. Like they weren't afraid to roll up their sleeves and jump in with you. How can I help? Like, let's talk through it. And we're okay with too, just letting you get it out and be like, all right, you're overreacting, but I understand how you feel the way you feel. And also teaching you emotional intelligence. Like the older I get in this and dealing with things that, you know, you're frustrated, like those people were like, you got to talk through this stuff, but you also got to like give yourself some time to like see the other side of things. So like empathy is another thing I've learned, especially with young people, and understanding the other side of things. And that doesn't mean that you don't, you know, pursue like a conversation, but just understanding like how you're feeling, how the other people are feeling. Like truly through that communication is everything, and helping lead people and making sure they're okay. And really just like being who you are. Like you got to be real. You can't not be yourself. And I think that's the thing that I'm best at is like, you know, you go into situations and you deal with so many different people. Like to truly lead, you just have to be yourself, because you can't be anyone else. But with that, and knowing that like not everyone's going to understand you. So I think more than anything, that's kind of a combobulated answer, but just like being real, like having fun, like even when stuff is hard, like we've been through a hard year, and just being adaptable and knowing like it's not always going to make sense. Life isn't always ideal, but like you got to take what you got and make the best of it and keep it moving. And like part of that is like laughing sometimes when things are just really bad and don't make sense, and you're like, of course, like, but also just keeping it moving, because if you control it, like just do the best you can. But on the other side of that leadership, like I think about all the coaches I've had the opportunity to work with. And to me, that's important, because, well, I do work in academics and I work for an academic boss. Like we're very much hand in hand with coaches. Like without them, we're nothing. There are heavy hitters, they support us. And just thinking about the leadership that I've had the opportunity to work with, like Coach Muschamp, I mean, he is the SEC, and like having someone who has so much going on be so supportive of academics, and like learning from him, like learning from Coach Stillman, who's now the head strength coach at IMG, even all these position coaches that have spent so much time, you know, not just in the SEC, but coaching college football. Like, and while, yeah, I'm an academic person and they're on the field, like getting the chance to learn about how they support young people and just like their tactics and their sense of urgency and how they carry themselves. Like it's every day is just like you're learning and like how they handle situations. And I just think about it, I'm like, you've crossed paths with some really solid people, and like just making sure that in a moment while there's so much going on that you're still having those conversations. And like truly my answer to all the leadership is like relationship. So regardless of who you are dealing with, how high on the totem pole or how low they are, like more than anything about leadership is, to me, is what I've learned is relationships. So investing, like asking questions and taking a minute to slow down and just like ask people how they're doing, or like popping in and seeing them. Like I know when we roll into the building, the coaches are like, academics is here, like alert, they're here. They likely have bad news, but it's like, no, like I'm just popping in to say, hey, like I don't have any bad news today. But just making sure that, you know, you're taking care of people and investing in that. So when you do need something, not that that's why you do it, but not just always calling because you need something, or, you know, we've been through a lot here in the last few months, but just checking on people and just, yeah.
That's awesome, Katie. Yeah, you shared a lot of great points right there. I think there was a couple of things that stood out to me. You mentioned relationships and you mentioned taking care of people. I think the best leaders have a way of knowing that everything is surrounded by the people. And once you show that you care about people first, they'll do anything for you. So I think you nailed it right there. We'll wrap it up with one last question real quick for you, Katie. We're seeing more and more female leaders evolve around the sports industry over the years. You are one of those strong female leaders. What's some advice that you would give to women that are looking to work in sports and become strong industry leaders?
It's an interesting question. And I think my answer may be a little bit too real. But I think the most important thing is that, like, it's not always going to be fair. And the sooner you realize that, and that doesn't mean that you don't work towards maybe changing the vibe of things, or like changing the trajectory of like the role of females in sport. Doesn't mean you don't work to that. Like, you're not just, hey, it is what it is, but truly where you are at in the now, you do have to understand that there's going to be situations that aren't always going to make sense or always going to be fair, but like you have to take that in stride, because if you spend a ton of time being up in arms about it, like you're not going to get anywhere. So first of all, it is what it is. Like, you have to be really aware of like your role and your presence. And I think my answer is maybe a little bit more loaded because I spend most of my time in rooms where I'm the only female of 40 men. And that's something that I continue to work on, is like you go into team meetings and you're speaking to 200 men, and you're running the meeting. And I've definitely something that I've learned and continue to try to evolve in that. But my biggest advice would just to be aware and like be who you are, but you also have to be who you are, like with a little bit of perceptiveness, if that makes sense. So judging the situation is a fluid process, and it's a day-to-day thing of like taking it all in. And with that, like you need to find someone who's done it. Like you need to have someone that you can ask hard questions or get opinions of someone who's lived it or gone where you want to go, or at least has that experience of, you know, how do I play this? Or like, you know, where do we move? And again, I'll say have relationships. Like sometimes it's going to be, I don't want to say scary, but like you're going to have to assert yourself and be okay with not always being comfortable. And I say that not in a bad way, but like if you want to assert yourself in the role, like you're going to have to roll up into situations where you're like, all right, I'm going to go do this. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but like at least putting yourself out there after you've read the situation. But on the other hand, with things like you have a strong female mentor who's done it, that you can ask questions, and maybe not things you would always talk about with others. But on the other hand is like, get you a strong network of males who are going to champion you. More than anything, like those have been the people that I've had support me the most. And I think that's more important. So it's like you get that group of guys. It's like, no, that's my girl. Like, she's going to come in, she's going to handle stuff. Like, you don't want anyone else. Like, you need that. But that again is relationships, and it's doing a really good job. So knowing when you do get the opportunity, like you got to do it right. Like you got to have attention to detail. You got to be urgent. You have to communicate, because there may be 50 opportunities out there and we're going to get one. So if you do get the one, like this isn't a trial and error type deal. This is like, all right, here's my jam. I'm going to own it, so that your actions speak for themselves, and you will get that track record of like, okay, that's my girl. Like if there's 50 guys up for that job and you've got a group of influential men who are like, no, you need to give her a look. Like that's essentially what's going to get you, in my opinion, at least working in football. Like that's what's going to push you through. But it's an evolving answer for sure. But I think it's a cool opportunity. Like you got to just go in and you got to own it essentially. But it's an adventure, as is everything.
Katie, that's a great question. I'm glad you shared that perspective. And from, our podcast here, I think we want to say that if you're a male leader out there, you should be championing women like Katie, and helping them get to where they deserve to be. And that is what we believe in. And, I'm happy to see where you're at. You're doing fantastic. These answers were fantastic. And just wanted to say thank you for sharing that today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Katie, thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule. We know you're crazy busy with all the student athletes and everything.
It's all good.
Absolutely. But you're doing great things, as Zach mentioned. I've always enjoyed following your career. I've made pit stops, Tina and I have, to every location. I promise South Carolina is going to happen soon. Keep impacting young people in the positive manner that you are constantly doing over the years, because I know you're doing wonderful things out there. Thanks, Katie.
I appreciate that. Thank you guys for having me on.
Absolutely.